We use a method called objective key results that enable us to set clear goals and expectation on the individual levels, team level, and company level, and we connect these three together. And that gives people the opportunity, if they wake up in the morning in Manila and their manager is on the other side of the world, that they know what they're expected to do and what success looks like.
Hello and welcome to Confessions of a B2B Entrepreneur. My name is Tom Hunt, your host, and today we have an awesome episode. This is an elite B2B entrepreneur. We're talking to Tony Jamous of Oyster HR and previously of Nexmo. Now, the story is awesome. Tony spent, I think, 4 to 5 years in the mobile SMS space, which led him to being able to build Nexmo, which is something to do with text messaging, what you'll learn about it in the episode. Built that, scaled it massively, hundreds of millions in revenue, sold it, and then is doing exactly the same thing in a slightly different world. And we'll dig into how those two businesses are very similar in the episode. It's super interesting. Now, Tony's building Oyster HR, which is a tool that helps you manage remote teams and payroll, etc. So awesome discussion. We also dig into is Tony's view on work-life balance, which is also very similar to how we think about work-life balance here at Fame. So very aligned, very impressed by Tony. Awesome interview, a lot to learn. Before we jump into that, shout out to fame.so for producing the show. We start and grow podcasts for B2B brands. If you want a show like this, then go to fame.so, request a proposal, tell them that I sent you, and we'll look after you in that process. So let's jump into this discussion with Tony now. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
So from my research, you have built 2 awesome companies, and I actually want to focus a bit more on the second one because a lot of the stuff I'm seeing from you and your team members on social suggests that you have built a unique and effective culture, but we're going to get to that. So first, I want to talk about Nexmo, and just a pretty simple question first. What do you think it was about you or the business that enabled you to make it grow?
Yeah, great question. I think what was critical for the growth of Nexmo, and Nexmo was an API business to build communication application. It was tools for developers. And what made this company grow so fast is actually timing of it. We launched this technology that was a disruptive technology. We lowered the barrier to entry for software developers to innovate and build applications with a telecom network. Before it wasn't even possible. You had to talk to each carrier in the world. So there was that. We lowered the barrier, and suddenly that coincided with the growth of all the messaging apps, the WhatsApp, the Viber, the WeChat in China. And these companies, they wanted to reach a global user base, and they were developers. So they flocked into our platform, and we went from $0 to $20 million of revenue in the first 2 years.
Wow, that's incredible. So we nailed the timing. We had the product that was right for what the market wanted to do. I assume operations would have been stressful on that journey from going from 0 to 20 million in 2 years. How do you think you managed to maintain and scale a company from the operations side?
Yeah, on the operation side, for me, these things operate by iteration. You build your first version, you discover it's not perfect, and then you iterate on it. And you need to have the right people at every stage of that iteration. So some people are great to get you from 0 to 1. Some people are great to get you from 1 to 10. Some people can do both. They can grow with the opportunities. You also have to be mindful of the people and their capabilities and give them unlimited opportunity for growth, and then get them to grow with the challenge that they are faced with. So that was critical to really build the operation by iteration. And it was pretty complicated operation because we had to connect to every mobile network in the world. And there's over 1,000 of them. And on the front end, we had to provide very simple one interface called API that enables these developers to reach any carrier in the world. And there's a lot of quality issues. You have to manage all these network issues. We build actually software to help us do that. That's also a timing question. Back 10 years ago, now you could build AI-driven algorithms that enables you to manage the quality of the network automatically. So that was also critical to be able to scale fast while maintaining the highest level of operational service.
What was your role? Am I right in saying that you had co-founders in this business?
Yeah. So I started this business on my own, and I'm software developer, but I didn't really develop much in my life, maybe for a couple of years. So I knew enough. But when I was pitching for my seed round for Nexmo, the feedback I was getting from investors is you need a technical co-founder. You're building tools for software developers. You need to be cutting edge there. And luckily, one of them introduced me to Eric, my co-founder, and I brought him in. And he was an amazing addition to the venture.
What were you doing before Nexmo?
Right before Nexmo, I took 1 year off from work. I was doing my business school in Switzerland, which enabled me really to build this business plan there. And before that, I was working in the mobile telecommunication industry for a more incumbent player for probably 4 years in total before starting my first company in London and France, Paris. And before that, I was at university.
Yeah, this makes total sense to me. Because you mentioned at the start, like timing was key for Nexmo. But the reason why it seems like you were able to jump on the timing is because you were like in that world for 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, timing is not 100% luck. So you have to have a sense of intuition. You have to develop a vision, your own vision of where the world is headed, and positions yourself ahead of the curve and spread that vision as much as you can around you in the ecosystem so other people start believing in it. When Bill Gates created the Microsoft vision, PC on every desk, very simple vision statement, he went in the industry and convinced the whole industry, the IT industry, to create personal computers, to create components, processors, screens for personal computers, and boom, Microsoft became a leader in operating system. Have a clear vision of where you want the world to go based on your intuition, and then evangelize it.
Makes total sense. But the step one, I think most people miss is they maybe think they have a vision, but it isn't correct because it isn't necessarily based on reality because they haven't spent 5 years working in the mobile telecommunications space. So would you agree that if somebody thinks a space could be big or is evolving fast, they should just go and work in it for a couple of years?
My second venture, Oyster HR, is in a completely different space, is in the HR tech industry, right? My experience with HR was primarily being a CEO of a company. I never thought that I will be in the HR tech industry. And actually, before starting Oyster, I was talking to some of my HR colleagues and none of them believed in what I was trying to do. This is not going to work. But I had a clear vision of where the world was going and I wanted to accelerate. I want Oyster to be an accelerator of what I thought would happen anyway, which is remote work.
But I would argue that you weren't in HR, but the CEO's job is, in my opinion, like a big part of that is people. You did that for X amount of years with Nexmo. And presumably also the Nexmo team wasn't all in an office. There was some distribution of the team, right? 45
countries, yeah. We were in 45 countries. But we were like the old school way of working, which is like we had to go to office to do meetings. Like I used to commute from San Francisco to London every month. So I can be in the London office, do meeting, can be in San Francisco office, do meetings. I burned out for 5 years doing that. And well, the airline industry was very happy to have me as a customer, but I don't want to go on a plane anymore. And that's what drove me to start Oyster as a fully distributed company where I can work from anywhere, which allowed me to relocate to the island of Cyprus. I'm the only employee on the island of Cyprus. We have employees in 70 countries. We have no offices. I don't need to go anywhere to be productive. I can be productive from Cyprus, from the beach here. I just came from the beach. I was with my kids having fun on the beach. And because I don't want to compromise, I don't want to limit myself because of my life choices. I want to stay unlimited in every dimension of my life.
Was one of the reasons why you decided to sell Nexmo and move on to Oyster because of this imbalance maybe between your work and personal life?
I wasn't that aware at that time. Actually, I took a year and a half off after Nexmo to really rebalance myself and expand my consciousness a little bit. But at that time, why we did a reverse merger with Vonage, what happens is that our direct competitor, a company called Twilio, was going public. We were the number 2. We were like half of their size. We were $100 million. They were $200 million. We were not ready to go public. We didn't have the scale. They had the scale, but we didn't want to miss the opportunity to be a public company at the moment of the hype of the market. Timing in IPO is critical. We fast-tracked that process by doing a reverse merger with Vonage. Vonage was a consumer telecommunication company in the US with declining revenues. The revenues were eaten by these messaging apps, WhatsApp of the world, the iMessage of the world, but they had $200 million of cash flow every year, but it was declining. So by doing a reverse merger, essentially Vonage turned into a B2B software vendor for the communication space. which led to expansion of their market cap from 1 billion on the moment of the merger to 6.5 billion 4 years later, and being acquired by Ericsson a few years ago for that number. So that's why we sold Nextmall, because actually it was our opportunity to go public, to fast track our way to the public market.
What was the time difference between completely taking yourself out of Nexmo and starting Oyster?
A year and a half. So I took a year and a half off between the two. After a year, I was doing a lot of work on myself. I dedicated that year for my well-being. I had my exit in my mid-30s. I had all this money and I was miserable in my life. I had addictive behaviors. My relationships were not great. And the way I'm living my life wasn't great. So I went on this journey of, okay, what needs to happen for me to heal, to grow internally inside of me? And at the same time, I was thinking about my next step. After a year, I had a business plan ready that is essentially a new version of Nexmo. I had investors lined up. I had a team ready to go. And in November 2019, I was doing this intense retreat of therapy. And at the end of the retreat, the next day, I went and incorporated Oyster. I shifted completely my business plan to Oyster because I knew that this is where my heart was. I wanted to create opportunities for people like me who had to leave their home countries. I'm originally from Lebanon. I had to leave when I was a teenager to France. I wanted people to stay in their home communities and have access to all the great job opportunity that we have in the West. Yeah, then my therapist told me, don't take any important decision for the next 10 days. So I went incorporating Oyster the next day and I never looked back.
That must have been an awesome retreat. Makes sense. So we had the time off. And did you have the inkling or the idea for Oyster during that year of recuperation, or did it come just at that retreat?
I experienced this pain of global employment in Nextmall. We hired in 45 countries. We spent millions of dollars building our own internal global employment infrastructure, setting up entities, hiring lawyer, accountant, and the employee experience was always subpar for our international employees. When I wanted to start a new business in late 2019, I knew that whatever business I would do is going to be a food distributed company because I wanted to tap into the global talent pool. I wanted to hire all these amazing people from emerging economies. I wanted to create massive amount of diversity. As I was building the business, I was researching, I was talking to HR people, to lawyers, like, how can I do that at scale? I don't want to have an office. I want to have my freedom. I want to live where I want to live. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to work when I want to work. And I couldn't find solutions. All the solutions I found were very old school professional services companies, no software usage, very expensive. They were fit for like trying somebody for a year in a country, but they were not fit to building a whole company fully distributed forever. But I knew that software can solve the problem because in my first business, Nextmall, I use the same architecture. We have all these countries in the world. Every country has a different telecom network. Every telecom network is different. So we created software to create an abstraction layer between the local complexities and one simple API that anybody can use to message people, to create voice applications. So in Oyster, the same thing. We have all these countries, they have different labor laws, different tax laws, different payroll regulations, and you create a software abstraction layer to make global employment as easy as local employment everywhere. So essentially, most of my business is the value I create in the market is essentially just using software to deal with the complexities that humans create unnecessarily in this world. Waste management. I have software to deal with waste of human potential.
It makes so much sense. The Oyster was the thing for you to do, A, because you believe in it and feel passionate about the mission, but then also you've basically done the same thing just in a whole different medium before.
Yes. So there was a transferable skills there. I mean, there's so many transferable skills, right? One of them is architectural ability to look at an industry and design a software platform that creates value. That's one key skill. There's also leadership skills that also got improved and fundraising skills. There's management skills. All these skills are transferable across opportunities.
For sure. Now, from my research of Oyster and consuming a lot of your own content as well, it seems like there's one insight that I think maybe is driving the whole thing. So let me run this past you. And this is also something I believe as well very strongly, is that with your team, if you're trying to compete between their lives and the work for the company, you're probably going to lose. And so why can't we create a world in which people can do everything they want to do, but still be able to add value to the business? Is that along the lines?
Absolutely. People at Oyster feel cared for by the business. Their work support their lives. So how we do that first is remove the unnecessary stressors that comes with work. I say challenge is inevitable, burnout is optional. So how can you create an environment where this can be true? An environment where people have emotional safety. They can show up at work their true self. They don't have to hide part of themselves and waste that energetic, emotional energy to resist being themselves. That's number one. And number two is about designing work that adapt to your life. So flexible work, you work when you can, you set your time zone. We default to asynchronous way of working. So you don't have to be in live meetings all day long to get stuff done. Most of the work is done async. And we train people on this. We train people, how do you take care of yourself at work? And what we're doing here is shifting people's perception to work, how they relate to their work. If you relate negatively to work and you're like blaming work for your life challenges, then you're not going to perform well. You're going to probably leave too early. You're going to be retained for a long time. On the contrary, if you feel positively towards your work, you feel that this work supports your life, gives you growth opportunity, gives you fulfillment, makes you work on things that you believe in, you're going to stay longer, higher retention, and be more engaged and productive.
Totally aligned with what we believe also. I have a couple of specific questions about work and culture at Oyster, if that's okay. Do you obviously everybody's all remote. Do you have core working hours where people need to be online or contactable, or does that differ per role, or can just people do their work whenever they would like?
Yeah, we don't. So it's maximum amount of flexibility. So I can tell you how I work. I have certain meetings that I have to attend. So for instance, we have the executive meeting on Tuesday, 1 hour. We have the CT meeting on Thursday, 1 hour. And then I have my one-to-ones with my direct reports. Okay. These are, I have to do them. I want to do them. Everything else is changeable. Everything else is changeable inside the company. But if you work with externally, then you have to adapt as well. Like when I talk to investors, talk to customers, then I have to align with their way of working.
How about in the customer service team though? Do they have shifts where they need to be online?
Yeah. So depending on your time zone, you need to be available to support these tickets. So that's anything that has customer facing need to adapt the customer, right? So that's not an option, I'm afraid.
Makes sense. And so with your direct reports, for example, you don't really care when they're doing the strategic work or the strategic tasks that you've set them. You're just reviewing it each week. They give you the report and then you give them feedback and then they go back to what they're doing.
Yeah. Why would I care when they would do it? If my CFO wants to build the finance strategy of the company at 2 a.m. in the morning, it's her choice. If she wants to do it at 8 p.m. in the evening, it's okay. Obviously, I check in with her to make sure she's not overworked. I make sure that she's aware of signs of any burnout and she has the resources to support her. But I don't care when she does it. But I care about the quality, the outputs. I care about the results.
This is the key, and that I've learned a lot recently, is that when you are being flexible in when or how the work is being done, you really do have to have robust performance management based on outputs or outcomes.
Yeah. So we use a method called objective key results. You might be familiar with, Tom, that enable us to set clear goals and expectation on the individual levels, team level, and company level, and we connect these three together. And that gives people the opportunity, if they wake up in the morning in Manila and their manager is on the other side of the world, that they know what they're expected to do and what success look like.
So every person has their OKRs?
At least every team has their OKRs, and some of them trickle to the individual level. We leave it to the manager. But there are teams, yes, of course, like take, for instance, sales. It's clear. We have a revenue target.
Did you raise money for Oyster or did you self-fund?
Yes. We raised $220 million in 3 rounds.
Very nice. And the current size in terms of people of the business?
We are 550 people distributed in 65 countries. And we are gender equal across the board, including in management ranks and on the board.
Incredible. With all that in mind, I'd love to dig into your day-to-day, if possible. And we can use yesterday or today as an example if you'd like. You did just say you're at the beach with the kid. Now you're recording a podcast. So yeah, I'd just love to just have a window into average or a normal day of Tony's work life.
Yeah. So first, we have something called Focus Friday on Oyster, where we don't have internal meetings on Friday. So that enables me to clean up my inbox, clear everything I need to clear. So when I go in the weekend, I don't have to open my computer. I don't have to answer a Slack message. I'm completely disconnected over the weekend. And Monday is also a slower day, much less meetings on Monday to get me into the work But Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they are very busy. I start working around noon. So I don't work in the morning. My mornings are always free because I work with my colleagues in Europe and US time zone. But in the evening and afternoon, it gets sometimes very busy. Sometimes I'm like back to back Zoom calls, but there's always 5 to 10 minute breaks in between calls that enables me to go and play some music. For instance, I play my guitar here. That's another advantage of working from home. I can add these hobbies in the way I want. I'm not forced to be in a place I don't necessarily need to be in. Yeah, that's how my week operates.
So apart from using Oyster, of course, if a CEO is listening, let's say 50 to 100 person team, they want to embrace more remote and flexible work, what if the one or two things you would say to them?
First is you need to be intentional. You need to be intentional in designing the way you're going to work together. So we call them the tools and the rules. When do you use which tool? In what situation you use Loom for recorded videos? This is how we do meetings. You have to provide 48 hours in advance pre-read. So you need to create a system that enables you to operationalize asynchronous work. Secondly is you need to train people on it. Don't expect it to release it and everybody's going to adopt. You can create a short training that get people, like an onboarding process, get people to adopt and learn about how they want to work together. And thirdly is experiment. It's not going to be like solved in the first version. And there's going to be a number of versions and iteration on it. You're going to learn, you're going to make small mistakes. None of these mistakes will be deadly. So it's really a great way to experiment in how you work because it's actually, you're improving every day a little bit.
Makes total sense. It's also something you mentioned regarding the Nexmo of scaling to 20 million in 2 years is iteration on operations. Because essentially the business is evolving. Like every, let's say, in your case, like 50 million of revenue, et cetera, the business is going to completely evolve. And so you have to iterate. Otherwise, things are going to break.
Yeah. And also you need to learn from the challenge you're faced with. You cannot necessarily choose challenges you're faced with, but you can choose how you respond to them, how you learn from them, how you shift and change yourself and your team and the organization as a result. I call it having ego flexibility because you're not attached to any version of the future. You're just responding to the challenges you're seeing with your values, with the way you see the world. And you're crafting this company like a long-term project.
I would love to ask you what you think your unique ability or abilities are. One that I'd like to propose to you is strategy/timing, because for both of these companies, it seems like you've absolutely nailed the timing, especially 2019 with Oyster, right? But A, so do you think that is one of your advanced skills or unique abilities? And then B, are there other that I don't know about?
Vision is also one of my gifts. I have the ability to have an intuition about the future and articulate it in a way that get people excited about. And then leadership as well. I like to be a leader that is more in the background, building this infrastructure and the systems for the organization to flourish and enable others to be in the spotlight. That's for me a great place to be the last few years.
I think that is also part of the definition of an awesome leader, is like stepping back and allowing other people to take stuff on.
What is the other half?
That's a valid point. You put me on the spot and I don't know if I have a good answer. But yeah, empowering, to serve and empower, right? Tony, I'm just so glad that other companies, and I think you guys are doing it better than us, other companies that are evangelizing this way of work, because we are in complete alignment with that. We're never going to beat the competition for our employees between their work lives and their personal lives. And I think for the last 100 years of human work, people think they can. But now, for whatever reason, I think some people are starting to realize you can't, and these awesome cultures are arriving. And so I just want to thank you for doing that and building Oyster and the culture and all the content that I've read, because I think it's something that is a great movement and is becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, it's awesome, Tom, to be talking about this. I feel like it's an honor for me to share with the world how we're building Oyster.
For sure. So we'll link to your Twitter, your LinkedIn. Obviously, we're going to link to Oyster. If anybody needs some software to enable global work, then check out Oyster. Anything else we should mention or link to?
My LinkedIn. I hang out on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me, I'm there.
For sure. Tony, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Okay, what do we think? Tony is awesome. Right. We're very, very aligned on how people should build their companies and how people should treat and work with their employees. So before we finish, I just got to read out this review. It's from Andrew Warner, who you may know of Mixergy fame. Tom knows how to get guests to talk. His understanding of guests help him find topics, other interviews. Means he's a good listener who gives the guests a space to talk. I love this pod. Thank you so much for that, Andrew. Really, really appreciate that. Of course, go and check out Mixgy, and then of course, go and check out Bootstrap Giants, which is the media company that Andrew just became CEO of. So go check those out. Of course, thanks to Tony for coming on. Thanks to Fame.so for producing this show. And thanks to you for listening.